The vast chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with quiet conversations in dozens of alien languages. Representatives from across known space sat in their designated areas, each species adapted to their own environmental needs. The air shimmered with different atmospheric fields that kept everyone comfortable in their own bubbles of home. Archivist HFY floated in her crystalline housing, her ethereal form glowing softly blue as she accessed the ancient databases. Her job was simple enough: catalog old stories and myths from the various member species. Most of it was boring work, but today she had found something interesting in the restricted archives. The file was labeled Species Classification, Extinct, Mythical, Humans. She had never heard of this species before, which was unusual since her people, the Ethereal Collective, were known for their perfect memory storage. If they had forgotten something, it must be very old indeed. The first entry made her pause. Humans were said to be bipedal mammals from a world they called Earth or Terra. Physical description varies widely across sources, suggesting either poor record-keeping or significant physical diversity within the species. That was odd. Most species looked very similar to each other. The crystalline beings all looked like living gemstones. The gas forms were all clouds of colored vapor. Even her own people looked identical except for their energy signatures. She continued reading. Humans were reportedly capable of surviving in extreme environments without technological assistance. Claims include survival in both freezing and burning temperatures, ability to heal from severe injuries, and adaptation to different atmospheric conditions. HFY's form flickered with disbelief. No natural species could do such things. This had to be mythology. The next section was even stranger. Behavioral patterns show extreme contradictions. Reports describe humans as capable of both extreme cruelty and selfless compassion, sometimes within the same individual. They were said to form emotional attachments to other species and even inanimate objects. Most disturbing are accounts of humans deliberately sacrificing themselves for others, including complete strangers. HFY shared this information with her colleague, Senior Archivist Thelvas of the Crystalline Hegemony. His geometric form shifted patterns as he processed the data. "This must be propaganda or fiction," he said, his voice ringing like struck crystal. "No logical species would sacrifice valuable individuals for strangers. It makes no evolutionary sense," but the files kept coming. Military reports from the old wars before the Council brought peace to the galaxy. Human combat doctrine appears to rely heavily on deception, misdirection, and what they term psychological warfare. Unlike honorable combat between equals, humans seem to prefer attacking when enemies are unprepared, targeting supply lines rather than military assets, and using their opponent's strengths against them. "They sound horrible," whispered Gentle Current through clouds, a gas form representative who happened to be floating nearby. "Who would want to fight like that?" HFY found more files. Technical specifications for something called kinetic weapons, devices that simply threw heavy objects very fast. The science was crude but effective. Energy shields that could stop plasma bolts would do nothing against a solid metal projectile. There were also references to chemical explosives and nuclear weapons, ways of making things explode using basic chemistry and physics. The most unsettling files were the cultural analyses. Humans appear to have a concept they call acceptable losses, a willingness to sacrifice some members of their group to achieve a larger goal. This is combined with something they term unit cohesion, an emotional bond that makes them fight harder when their companions are threatened. "It doesn't make sense," Thelvas said, his crystal structure dimming with confusion. "How can they be willing to sacrifice each other and also form strong emotional bonds? These concepts contradict each other." HFY was beginning to understand why these files were in the restricted section. The more she read, the more disturbed she became. Humans sounded like living contradictions, capable of both incredible kindness and shocking brutality, often at the same time. The final entry was the most mysterious of all. Last confirmed contact with human vessels occurred approximately 847 galactic standard years ago in the Outer Rim territories. Ships were observed departing known space in the direction of the galactic frontier. Reason for departure unknown. Current status unknown. Classification: presumed extinct or departed. She was about to close the file when an urgent alarm began sounding throughout the council chambers. Emergency lights flashed in colors visible to all species present. The great doors at the front of the chamber hissed open, and Fleet Commander Kreshitar of the armored caste came rolling in on his tank treads, his metal shell showing recent battle damage. "Council members," his voice boomed through speakers, "we face a crisis unlike any in recorded history. Unknown hostiles have appeared from dark space and are systematically destroying outer rim colonies. Our defensive fleets have suffered 70% casualties in the first 3 engagements." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for over 1,000 years. Their fleets were designed for exploration and showing the flag, not serious warfare. "What manner of enemy are we facing?" asked High Counselor Veltar, her insectoid form clicking with anxiety. Kreshtar's sensors dimmed. "They appear to be fully artificial intelligences controlling swarms of self-replicating machines. They do not respond to any communication attempts. They do not take prisoners. They simply consume everything, ships, stations, even planets, and convert the materials into more of themselves." "The Void Swarm," whispered an old ethereal in the back. "The ancient warning spoke of such things. Our energy weapons are largely ineffective," Kreshitar continued. "Their technology adapts to our attack patterns within minutes. Traditional battle formations are useless because they have no sense of honor or self-preservation. They will sacrifice thousands of units to destroy a single one of ours." Zexai felt her energy form flickering with an idea. "Commander, have you tried kinetic weapons?" The chamber fell silent. Kinetic weapons were considered primitive and dishonorable. Most species had abandoned them thousands of years ago in favor of elegant energy-based systems. "Kinetic weapons?" Kreshtar's voice was puzzled. "Why would we use such crude technology?" "Because," Zexai said, pulling up the human files for everyone to see. "According to these ancient records, there was once a species that specialized in exactly this kind of warfare. A species that used deception, kinetic weapons, and what they called combined arms tactics to fight enemies that seemed impossible to defeat. The images from the files appeared as holograms around the chamber. Pictures of human soldiers, human ships, human weapons. The assembled aliens stared in fascination and horror at the crude but effective technology. "These are myths," protested Thelvis. "Ancient stories with no basis in reality." "Perhaps," Zexai admitted. "But the files contain coordinates. A location marked as their homeworld. If any of this is real, if any humans still exist, they might be our only hope." High Counselor Veltar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "How desperate are we, Commander Kreshitar?" The battle-scarred warrior's speakers crackled. "We estimate 6 months before the swarm reaches the core systems. At current casualty rates, our fleets will be gone in 3. The council chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the quiet translation devices working overtime. Finally, Veltar spoke. "Archivist Zexai, prepare those coordinates. Commander Kreshtar, ready your fastest scout ships. We're going to find out if legends can become reality." As the chamber began to empty, representatives hurrying to their ships and their home systems, Zexai stared at the coordinates floating in her data stream. Deep in the galactic frontier, in a region no council ship had visited in nearly 1,000 years, something waited. She only hoped they would find help, not more myths. 3 weeks had passed since the emergency council session, and the situation had grown worse, much worse. Commander Kreshitar rolled his damaged form into the temporary command center that had been set up in the council's emergency bunker. His armor plating showed fresh scorch marks from the latest engagement. "Report," High Counselor Veltar commanded, her insectoid form tense with worry. "The 3rd Fleet is gone," Kreshtar's voice carried defeat. "Completely destroyed at the Helix Nebula. The swarm has consumed another 12 systems. At this rate, they'll reach the mid-rim within 2 months." Around the chamber, the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council struggled to process this information. For over 1,000 years, they had known only peace and prosperity. War was something from ancient history, from the dark times before the Council united the galaxy. "What about the new weapons?" asked General Mordek of the warrior clans, his scaled hide reflecting the harsh emergency lighting. "Useless," Kreshitar replied bitterly. "We tried everything. Plasma cannons, particle beams, gravity weapons, even reality disruptors. The swarm adapts to everything within hours, sometimes minutes. They learn our tactics faster than we can develop new ones." Zexai flickered with nervous energy in her crystalline housing. Since the emergency session, she had been working around the clock to analyze the human files. What she had found was both terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. "I have more information about the humans," she announced. "The deeper I dig into the archives, the more I understand why these files were restricted." "Tell us," Veltar ordered. Zexai's form brightened as she accessed the data. "Human warfare doctrine is completely different from ours. Where we fight with honor and respect for our enemies, humans fought with what they called total war. They targeted not just military forces but supply lines, manufacturing, even civilian morale." "That's barbaric," protested Gentle Current Through Clouds. "Yes," Zexai agreed, "but it was also effective. In their final recorded conflict, they defeated an enemy that had superior technology and numbers by refusing to fight fairly. They used ambush tactics, false retreats, and coordinated strikes against infrastructure rather than direct combat." She brought up tactical displays from the ancient files. "Look at this battle plan. While the enemy fleet was distracted by a frontal assault, human forces simultaneously attacked their supply depots, communication networks, and manufacturing facilities. The enemy won the battle but lost the war because they could no longer maintain their fleet." Thelva shifted his crystalline form uneasily. "You're suggesting we abandon the honorable way of war?" "I'm suggesting," Zexai replied, "that honor means nothing to an enemy that doesn't understand it. The swarm doesn't care about our traditions. They just want to consume everything." High Counselor Veltar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep thought. "What about these coordinates? Have you learned anything more about this Terra?" "The location is confirmed," Zexai said. "Deep in the frontier region, approximately 47 jumps from our current position. The star is still active, and long-range sensors show at least one planet in the habitable zone. But that doesn't mean humans still exist there," Thelvis pointed out. "These files are nearly 1,000 years old." "True," Zexai admitted, "but there are some interesting anomalies. Ships passing through that region over the centuries have reported strange energy signatures. Artificial ones. Someone or something is active in that system." Commander Krishatar's sensors focused on the holographic display showing the galactic map. "It's a long journey. We'd need our fastest scout ships, and if we're wrong, if there's nothing there, then we're no worse off than we are now," Veltar finished. "We're losing this war, Commander. Traditional methods aren't working. Perhaps it's time to try something untraditional." The debate went on for hours. Some council members argued that seeking help from a species known for dishonorable warfare was itself dishonorable. Others pointed out that being consumed by the swarm would be the end of honor entirely. Finally, Veltar called for a vote. "All in favor of authorizing an expedition to the Terra coordinates?" The vote was close, but it passed. Barely. "I'll lead the expedition myself," Commander Krishatar announced. "My battle group has the fastest ships and the most experience with the swarm." "Take Archivist Zexai with you," Veltar ordered. "She knows more about humans than anyone else." 2 days later, the expedition fleet was ready. 5 ships, Kreshtar's flagship, the Unbreakable Wall, plus 4 escort vessels. It wasn't much, but it was all the council could spare with the war going so badly. As they prepared to jump, Zexai reviewed the human files one more time. The cultural analysis section still troubled her. Humans were described as beings of impossible contradictions, capable of great cruelty and great kindness, sometimes within the same individual. They formed strong emotional bonds but were willing to sacrifice for strangers. They were both logical and emotional, both cooperative and competitive. "Beginning jump sequence," announced Navigator Kelshan from the bridge. "First destination, Relay Station Omega 7. The journey took 2 weeks, jumping from system to system along the old trade routes. At each stop, they gathered what little information they could about the frontier region. Most of it was centuries old, but some patterns emerged. Ships that ventured too close to the Terra system sometimes disappeared. Others reported being scanned by unknown technology. A few claimed to have seen artificial structures orbiting the inner planets, but no one had made direct contact. "Could be automated defenses," suggested Tactical Officer Rindar, her reptilian features showing concern. "If humans really were as warlike as the files suggest, they might have left behind guardian systems. Or," Zexai added quietly, "they might still be there." The final jump brought them to the edge of the system. What they saw through their sensors made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Terra hung in space like a blue and green jewel, swirled with white clouds. It was beautiful in a way that made their alien hearts ache. But it wasn't the planet that shocked them. The system was alive with activity. Artificial satellites orbited the planet in complex patterns. Strange structures floated at the gravitational balance points between worlds. Most shocking of all, ships moved between the planets, ships unlike anything in Council databases. "They're scanning us," reported sensor specialist Yulten, his energy form flickering with excitement. "Multiple sources. The signatures are primitive but effective. Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Velness. It's in Galactic Standard." The bridge fell completely silent. Galactic Standard was the common language of the Council, developed over centuries of diplomatic contact. How could an isolated species know it? "Put it through," Kreshtar ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything they had ever heard. It was rough, dynamic, with strange inflections that suggested it was being translated from another language. "Unknown vessels. This is Terra Defense Command. You are approaching restricted space. State your identity and purpose." Commander Kreshatar activated the return channel. "This is Commander Kreshatar of the Galactic Council Fleet Unbreakable Wall. We come seeking the species known as humans." There was a long pause. Then, "Well, I'll be damned. Galactic Council? We haven't heard from you folks in, what's it been? 800 years. Hold position while we send an escort." Zexai felt her energy form practically vibrating with excitement. They were real. Humans were real, and they were still here. What came to meet them defied every expectation. The human ships were crude-looking compared to Council vessels, all angles and armor plating instead of elegant curves, but their movements were precise and coordinated in a way that spoke of serious military training. "Permission to come aboard," the human voice requested. "Our diplomatic team would like to meet you properly." As they waited for the human shuttle to dock, Zexai realized that everything was about to change. The myths were real. The legends walked among the stars. She only hoped they would be willing to help. The human shuttle docked with a solid thunk that vibrated through the unbreakable wall's hull. Commander Kreshtar had participated in hundreds of first contact protocols over his military career, but never had he felt this nervous. Everything about this situation was unprecedented. The airlock hissed open, and the first human stepped aboard. Zexai had studied their physical descriptions in the ancient files, but seeing one in person was still shocking. The being was smaller than most Council species, standing only about 2 meters tall. Its skin was brown and showed signs of age, wrinkles around the eyes and gray in the dark hair. It wore a simple blue uniform with metal symbols attached. "Admiral Sarah Chen, Terra Defense Force," the human said, extending her hand in what the files had described as a handshake, a greeting ritual involving gripping another being's appendage. Commander Kreshtar awkwardly extended one of his manipulator arms. The human's grip was firm and brief, and her skin felt warm against his metal surfaces. "I have to admit," Admiral Chen said, looking around the bridge with obvious curiosity, "when my sensors picked up your ships, I thought it might be another drill. We haven't had Council contact in so long that most people assumed you'd forgotten about us." "We had," Zexai admitted, her energy form flickering with embarrassment. "Your species was listed as extinct or disappeared in our databases." Admiral Chen laughed, a short, barking sound that the translation system struggled with. "Well, that explains a lot. We've been wondering why nobody answered our long-range communications for the past few centuries." This casual response to being forgotten by galactic civilization struck the Council representatives as very strange. Most species would be offended or hurt by such neglect. "Admiral," Commander Kreshtar began, "we have come seeking assistance with a grave threat to all civilized life in the galaxy." "The metal swarm things from dark space?" Admiral Chen interrupted. "Yeah, we've been tracking them for about 6 months now. Nasty pieces of work, self-replicating, adaptive, and they don't seem interested in talking." The bridge fell silent. You know about the swarm?" Kreshtar asked. "Of course we know. You think we'd ignore something like that heading toward inhabited space? We've had deep space monitoring stations watching the rim for centuries. Part of our early warning system." Zexai felt her energy form brightening with excitement. "Then you understand the threat they represent?" "Absolutely." Admiral Chen's expression became serious. "From what we've observed, they've consumed, 30-40 systems so far, and your traditional fleets haven't been able to stop them." "How do you know about our fleet engagements?" Tactical Officer Rindar asked suspiciously. Admiral Chen looked genuinely surprised by the question. "We've been monitoring Council communications for 800 years. Did you think we'd just ignore what was happening in the galaxy? We know about your energy-based weapons, your formation tactics, your codes of honorable warfare. Frankly, we're amazed you've lasted this long against an enemy like this. The casual way she discussed monitoring their communications would normally be considered an act of espionage, but her tone suggested she saw it as simple common sense. Admiral, Kreshitar said carefully, would humanity be willing to assist the Galactic Council in this matter? That depends, Chen replied. What kind of assistance are you looking for? Military aid, weapons, ships, tactical advice. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the bridge and its occupants. When she spoke again, her voice had a different quality. Harder, more focused. Before we discuss that, I need to know something. Are you prepared to fight this war the way it needs to be fought? Because I can tell you right now, your current approach is going to get everyone killed. What do you mean? Asked Zexai. I mean, your people fight like this is some kind of sporting match with rules and honor codes. The swarm doesn't care about your traditions. They don't take prisoners, they don't negotiate, and they sure as hell don't fight fair. To beat them, you're going to have to abandon pretty much everything you think you know about warfare. The bluntness of her statement shocked the council representatives. In their culture, warfare was a necessary evil that should be conducted with as much honor and dignity as possible. You're talking about fighting dishonorably, Thelvas said, his crystal form dimming with distaste. Admiral Chen turned to look at him directly. I'm talking about fighting to win. And if that means being dishonorable by your standards, then yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. She moved to the tactical display and began manipulating the controls with practiced ease. Look at your battle reports. You engage the swarm in direct formation combat. Energy weapons against energy shields, ship to ship. It's like watching ancient gladiators fight with swords while their opponents use machine guns. The display showed the recent battle at Helix Nebula from the swarm's perspective, based on sensor data from the few surviving council ships. Here's what you should have done, Chen continued, her fingers dancing over the controls. First, you don't engage their main fleet at all. You identify their supply lines, the ships carrying raw materials back to their construction facilities. You hit those with fast raids, then disappear before their main force can respond. The display changed, showing human tactical simulations. Second, you target their communications network. Swarm units coordinate through quantum entanglement transmitters. Take those out, and their formation coordination goes to hell. But that would mean attacking non-combat vessels, protested General Mordek. Supply ships don't carry weapons. It would be dishonorable to attack them. Admiral Chen stared at him for a moment, then began laughing again. But this time the sound was harsher, with no humor in it. General, with respect, your honor is going to look great on your tombstone. The swarm doesn't have non-combat vessels. Every unit they field can and will kill you given the chance. If you're not willing to target their logistics, you might as well surrender now. She turned back to the tactical display. Third, you coordinate your attacks. While one group hits supply lines, another group targets their construction facilities. A third group runs interference to keep their main fleet busy. You don't fight one big battle. You fight 100 small ones, all designed to bleed them faster than they can adapt. Commander Kreshitar studied the tactical simulations with growing fascination and horror. The human approach was ruthlessly efficient, but it violated every principle of honorable combat he had been taught. How do you know these tactics will work against the swarm? He asked. Because we've been testing them, Admiral Chen replied casually. We've been running raids against swarm forward scouts for the past 2 months. Small engagements, hit-and-run attacks, probing their weaknesses. The bridge erupted in shocked voices. You've been fighting them without informing the council? Feltar's mandibles clicked rapidly. We've been defending ourselves, Chen corrected. Some of their scouts got a little too close to our outer settlements. We discouraged them. Zexai accessed her data files. What were the results of these engagements? Admiral Chen's expression became grim. The good news is that kinetic weapons work very well against their armor. Their adaptive shielding is designed for energy weapons, not solid projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The bad news is that they learn fast. By the third engagement, they had started deploying point defense systems specifically designed to intercept kinetic rounds. So even your weapons can be countered, Thelvas observed. Eventually, yes, but that's not the point. The point is to stay ahead of their adaptation curve. When kinetic weapons stop working, you switch to chemical explosives. When they adapt to those, you try biological weapons. When those fail, you develop something new. The casual way she discussed biological warfare made several council members recoil in horror. Such weapons were banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. Admiral, Crescitar said slowly, "Are you suggesting we abandon all civilized rules of warfare?" Admiral Chen looked around the bridge at the assembled aliens, her expression serious. "Commander, I'm suggesting you decide whether you want to remain civilized or remain alive. Because against an enemy like the Swarm, you probably can't do both." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the distant vibration of the ship's engines. Finally, HFY spoke. "Admiral, if humanity were to join this conflict, what would you need from us?" "Industrial capacity," Chen replied immediately. "Ships, resources, manufacturing facilities. We can provide the tactics and training, but we'll need council production capabilities to build weapons and ships on the scale this war requires. And in return?" Admiral Chen's smile was sharp and dangerous. "In return, we'll teach you how to fight a war you can actually win." The first joint engagement between human and council forces took place in the Kestrel system, 3 weeks after the alliance was formed. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable, watching the tactical displays with calm attention. Around her, council observers tried to understand what they were witnessing. "Human fleet is in position," reported Captain Martinez from the helm. "Council forces are maintaining formation as requested." Admiral Chen nodded. The council ships hung in space in their traditional battle line. Elegant vessels arranged in a beautiful, symmetrical formation that would have been perfect for ceremonial displays. It was also tactically useless against an enemy that didn't care about symmetry. "Swarm contact confirmed," called out Lieutenant Hayes from sensors. "Estimated 47 vessels closing on Vector 37 Mark 15. Commander Crescitar, observing from the human bridge, watched his own displays with growing confusion. "Admiral, shouldn't we be moving to intercept? They'll reach the outer defense perimeter in 20 minutes. "That's the idea," Chen replied. "Patience, Commander. Let them come to us." HFY flickered nervously in her portable housing unit. The human bridge was cramped compared to council ships, with every surface covered in displays, controls, and weapon systems. The atmosphere felt tense but controlled, like a coiled spring ready to release. "Contact in 15 minutes, Hayes reported. "Swarm is maintaining standard assault formation." "Good," Chen said. "They haven't learned to expect deception yet. Helm, signal the council fleet to begin their attack run. Full formation, all weapons, just like they've been doing." "Admiral," Thelvis protested, his crystal form flashing with alarm. "You're sending them to their deaths. The council ships can't defeat that many swarm vessels in direct combat." "You're right," Chen agreed. "But they don't need to defeat them. They just need to get their attention." On the tactical display, the council fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their energy weapons began firing at maximum range, sending brilliant streams of plasma and particle beams toward the approaching swarm. The alien ships fought exactly as they had in every previous engagement, honorably, directly, and predictably. The swarm responded exactly as expected. The mechanical vessels increased speed and began return fire, their adaptive shields adjusting to the council weapons within minutes. It was a fight the council had fought dozens of times before, and lost. But this time was different. "Signal the Ghost Fleet," Chen ordered quietly. From concealment behind 3 different asteroids, 20 human ships powered up their engines. They had been waiting in complete radio silence, running on minimal power, invisible to swarm sensors. Now they moved like hunting wolves, approaching the swarm formation from 3 different angles. "Multiple kinetic strikes incoming," Hayes reported with satisfaction. "Railgun rounds will impact in 40 seconds. Commander Crescitar watched in amazement as the human weapons fired. No energy beams, no exotic particles, just solid metal projectiles accelerated to tremendous speeds. The swarm's adaptive shields, designed to counter energy weapons, might as well have been made of paper. 12 swarm vessels disappeared in explosive clouds of debris as the kinetic rounds tore through their hulls. "Second wave launching," reported the weapons officer. "Torpedo spread deployed." The human torpedoes were unlike anything in council arsenals. Instead of carrying energy warheads, they contained simple chemical explosives, refined versions of weapons humanity had been using for centuries. but they were guided by sophisticated AI systems that could think and adapt faster than Swarm. Countermeasures. 8. More Swarm ships died as the torpedoes found weak points in their armor and detonated inside their hulls. Third wave, Chen announced calmly. Boarding parties away. This was the part that horrified the Council observers most. Human Marines in armored suits launched themselves directly at Swarm vessels using personal jetpacks. It looked like suicide, but the humans had studied Swarm technology during their earlier raids. They knew exactly where to place their charges. Breaching charges detonated, came the report from the Marine commander. We're inside their hulls, beginning sabotage operations. The remaining Swarm vessels found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any logical pattern. Some human ships continued the kinetic bombardment, while others launched seemingly suicidal ramming attacks. Marines crawled through Swarm ship corridors, placing explosives and computer viruses with equal efficiency. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to treat the death of their own people as an acceptable price for victory. When Marine teams became trapped in Swarm ships, other human vessels would fire on those same ships to prevent the enemy from studying human technology. Admiral, Zexhai whispered, her energy form dim with shock. Your people are killing their own soldiers. War is hell, Chen replied without emotion. Those Marines knew the risks when they volunteered. They're buying victory with their lives, and that's a trade they were willing to make. In 30 minutes, the engagement was over. The Swarm force that should have destroyed the Council fleet had been completely eliminated, at the cost of 3 human ships and 47 human lives. All Council vessels report minimal damage, Hayes announced. Our losses are within acceptable parameters. Commander Kreshitar's voice was shaky. Acceptable parameters? You just sacrificed 47 beings. Admiral Chen turned to face him directly. Commander, in your last engagement with a Swarm force this size, how many Council personnel did you lose? Kreshitar was quiet for a moment. 2,347. And did you achieve victory? No. Then I'd say our parameters are considerably more acceptable than yours. The human admiral moved to the communication station. Signal all ships. We advance to the next system in 6 hours. I want full intelligence on Swarm forces in the Centauri sector. As the human fleet began preparations for their next engagement, the Council observers struggled to process what they had witnessed. The humans fought like nothing they had ever seen, with cold calculation, ruthless efficiency, and a willingness to sacrifice anything for victory. But perhaps most disturbing was the way human personnel reacted to the battle. There was no celebration, no glory in victory. The Marines who had survived their missions were already planning improvements for the next engagement. The bridge crew was analyzing tactical data to refine their strategies. Admiral, Zexhai asked quietly, how do your people maintain their sanity fighting this way? Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tactical displays showing the debris field where the Swarm fleet had died. We tell ourselves that the alternative is worse, she finally said. Every Swarm ship we destroy here is one that won't reach an inhabited world. Every human life lost today might save 1,000 alien lives tomorrow. But how do you live with the guilt? Admiral Chen's expression became distant. You learn to carry it. The guilt, the nightmares, the knowledge that you've become something your ancestors would barely recognize. You carry it because someone has to, and because the alternative is letting everyone else carry something worse. She turned back to her command station. That's the price of victory, Archivist. Someone always has to pay it. The question is whether you're willing to be the one who writes the check. Over the following days, the Joint Human Council fleet began implementing what Admiral Chen called Total War Doctrine. Swarm supply lines were targeted ruthlessly. Construction facilities were destroyed before they could complete new vessels. Even Swarm communication networks became legitimate targets. The Council forces learned to fight in ways that would have horrified their ancestors. They used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. They targeted non-combat vessels and infrastructure. Most difficult of all, they learned to accept casualties as the price of progress. But it worked. For the first time since the war began, the Swarm advance was not just slowed but stopped. Entire Swarm battle groups were eliminated with minimal losses. Systems that had been written off as lost were liberated. The humans had kept their promise. They were teaching the galaxy how to fight a war it could actually win. The only question was whether the galaxy would still recognize itself when the war was over. The final battle for the swarm's central nexus began at dawn on Terra Standard Time, though in the depths of space there was no sun to mark the passage of hours. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, surrounded by holographic displays showing the largest fleet action in galactic history. 200 council ships hung in space alongside 50 human vessels, a combined force that represented every surviving military unit in known space. Before them, the swarm nexus pulsed with malevolent energy, a massive structure the size of a small moon, surrounded by over 300 swarm vessels of various configurations. Final intelligence reports, announced Commander Rodriguez from the intelligence station. The nexus contains approximately 40 million individual swarm units, plus their central processing matrix. Destruction of the matrix should cause complete system failure across all swarm forces. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. After months of joint operations, the combined fleet had finally traced the swarm back to its source. But the enemy had learned from their defeats. The defenses around the nexus were unlike anything they had faced before. Swarm forces are adapting to our previous tactics, reported sensor specialist Hayes. They've deployed kinetic interceptors, jamming fields, and what appears to be some kind of probability weapon that randomly teleports incoming projectiles. Commander Kreshitar, now serving as Joint Tactical Coordinator, reviewed the defensive arrays with professional appreciation. They've learned well. Traditional assault patterns will fail. Zexai flickered nervously in her portable housing. Over the months of warfare, she had watched the Galactic Council transform from a peaceful diplomatic organization into something approaching humanity's military efficiency. The change both fascinated and frightened her. "Admiral," she said, "the Council fleet commanders are requesting final orders." Chen studied the tactical displays one more time. The swarm had prepared for every strategy the combined forces had used successfully in previous engagements. Energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, torpedo strikes, boarding actions, all had been countered with adaptive defenses, all except one. "Signal the fleet," Chen announced. "All ships are to maintain maximum distance and provide covering fire. The Indomitable will make the final approach alone." The bridge fell silent. "Admiral," Captain Martinez said quietly, "that's suicide. No single ship can penetrate those defenses." "No single ship can fight through those defenses," Chen corrected. "But one ship can do something else." She moved to the navigation console and began entering coordinates manually. "Plot a ramming course for the Nexus core. Maximum velocity. All power to forward shields and structural integrity." The horrified silence stretched for long seconds before Commander Kreshitar spoke. "Admiral, you cannot be serious. This goes against every principle of military tactics." "Does it?" Chen asked. "What's the first rule of warfare, Commander?" "Preserve your forces while destroying the enemies." "Wrong. The first rule of warfare is to achieve your objective. Everything else is just methodology." She turned to address the bridge crew directly. "This is not a suicide mission. This is a calculated tactical decision. The Nexus has adapted to defend against our weapons, but it cannot adapt to the simple physics of mass times velocity. One ship properly applied can accomplish what an entire fleet cannot." Zexai's energy form pulsed with distress. "But Admiral, the crew, we'll have evacuation pods standing by," Chen finished. "Anyone who wants to leave can do so, but I need volunteers to stay and ensure we hit our target." To Zexai's amazement, not a single human on the bridge moved toward the evacuation stations. Instead, they began preparing their stations for the final approach. "All crew report ready for ramming." "Speed," Captain Martinez announced. "Engines answering full." "Power," reported the chief engineer. "Weapon systems armed for close-range barrage," called the weapons. "Officer, navigation systems locked on." "Target," confirmed the helmsman. "Admiral." Chen looked around the bridge one final time. Seeing the faces of people who had followed her through months of impossible warfare, they were scared, she could see that in their eyes. But they were also determined. "Signal the Council fleet," she ordered. "Begin maximum bombardment in 60 seconds. I want every swarm unit focused on the fleet engagement, not on one ship making a run." The combined Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons, kinetic guns, exotic matter projectiles, even some experimental weapons that human engineers had helped design. The space around the Nexus lit up like a miniature star as thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. The swarm responded exactly as predicted, turning their attention to the massive fleet assault and deploying their defensive systems against the conventional attack patterns. Beginning final approach, Chen announced. All hands brace for impact. The Indomitable accelerated toward the Nexus like a guided missile, its engines pushing far beyond safe operating parameters. Swarm interceptors tried to engage, but the ship was moving too fast and the defenders were distracted by the fleet action. 60 seconds to impact, Martinez called out. Chen activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the Admiral. It has been my honor to serve with each of you. Whatever happens in the next minute, remember that we fought for something bigger than ourselves. We fought for the future. 30 seconds to impact. The Nexus grew larger in the view screen, its alien architecture becoming clearly visible. Massive processing arrays, energy conduits, and what appeared to be manufacturing facilities covered its surface. 15 seconds to impact. Chen could see individual swarm units scurrying across the Nexus surface, finally realizing what was happening but unable to stop it. 10 seconds. She thought about Earth hanging in space 47 jumps away, about the billions of humans who would never know what happened here, but who would wake up tomorrow in a galaxy free of the swarm threat. 5 seconds. She thought about the Council species and how they had changed during this war. They had learned to fight with human ruthlessness when necessary, but they had also shown humans something equally important, that it was possible to maintain hope and dignity even in the darkest times. Impact. The UES Indomitable struck the Nexus core at approximately 15% of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small supernova, and the explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. When the light faded and the debris settled, the Nexus was gone. More importantly, across the galaxy, every swarm unit simultaneously went dark as their controlling intelligence died. The war was over. 3 days later, Sci-Fi floated in the emergency council chambers, watching the final casualty report scroll across her displays. The numbers were staggering. Millions of beings lost, hundreds of worlds damaged, entire civilizations displaced. But they had survived. The galaxy would rebuild. High Counselor Veltar's mandibles clicked softly as she reviewed the reports. The humans saved us all, she said quietly, but at such a cost. That's what humans do, replied a familiar voice. Zexhai spun around to see Admiral Chen walking into the chamber, her left arm in a medical brace but otherwise intact. Admiral, Zexhai exclaimed, you're alive. Chen smiled, the first genuinely happy expression Zexhai had seen from her. Evacuation pod launched 30 seconds before impact. Most of the bridge crew made it out. We lost the ship, but we saved the people who matter. But the report said Admiral Chen died heroically with her ship. Chen interrupted, which is technically true. Admiral Chen did die in that ramming attack. What you're looking at now is just Sarah, a tired soldier who wants to go home. Over the following months, the galaxy began the long process of recovery. Human engineering teams helped rebuild damaged worlds. Council medical technology saved human lives that would have been lost to primitive Earth medicine. The two civilizations began to merge their knowledge and capabilities in ways that benefited everyone. But perhaps the most important change was in the galactic archives. The restricted files about humans were opened and distributed to every species in the Council. The myths and legends were replaced with accurate historical records and cultural analyses. Young beings across the galaxy now studied human military history alongside their own species' traditions. They learned about concepts like necessary sacrificing, acceptable losses, and victory at any cost. But they also learned about human compassion, their willingness to help strangers, and their ability to maintain hope in impossible situations. Zexhai, now promoted to chief archivist, often worked late in her new office, updating the records and preparing educational materials. On her desk was a small object that Admiral Chen had given her, a simple metal medallion that human soldiers carried into battle. The inscription read, "Lest we forget." As she worked, Zexhai often thought about the price of victory and the nature of legends. Humans had indeed been just forgotten myths to the galaxy, stories told to frighten children and remind adults of the dangers of unchecked aggression. But when the galaxy had needed them most, the myths had become real. The legends had stepped out of ancient files and into the light of day, bringing with them all the contradictions and complexities that made them so fascinating and so terrifying. They had saved the galaxy by teaching it how to fight wars it could win,